Hello and welcome to the Winners Find a Way show. I am your host, Trent Clark. I am the CEO of Leadershipity, a serial entrepreneur, do a lot of education for athletes, influencer marketing, and I am the author of Leading Winning Teams with Wiley Publishing. That book published out August 20th with the Audible arriving on November 12th. So super excited about that. And of course, most people know me because I spent over 13 years in professional baseball coaching in 3 World Series. And today on the Winners Find a Way show, I welcome my friend Robert Steinfeld. Robert, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be here.
Man, I am really happy you're here too, Robert. We got a lot to cover. Some call you Bob, some call you Bobby. I'm going to stick with Robert. We're going to keep this thing on the pro level, but we may get a little crazy. So we'll see. But you are the new author of 3, 2, 1. We're on the air. That book is just rolled out and just rolling. 5 decades in the sport business as an executive producer, doing all sorts of different work in the space of sports. And you just produced some doozies, man. I mean, it's so fun. And back into my day, man, one of the first ones I think back in the day that I really knew about was Fastball, right? Where you produced a special with Nolan Ryan, man, who everybody in my era looked up to. And then at that time, a newcomer, Randy Johnson, now a household name as well when you think about a fastball and a pitching, because anyone in that era knew staring down 6'10", 6'11" lefty throwing 100 miles an hour was not easy, right? So, man, you have been around the whole sports spectrum for a long time. Welcome, Robert. Thrilled to have you, man.
Yeah, I'm happy again to be here, but I would not want to be a seagull up in the Seattle area when Randy Johnson was pitching there, because I remember one distinct time where the seagull was flying through and he threw the ball down the pike, and it never actually, I think, reached home plate, but poor bird.
Yep. Yeah, that did happen. That is a fact about baseball. That's right. He did. Randy Johnson killed a bird in flight. I don't know what the bird was thinking. I'm always shocked. I'm always shocked when we're driving as birds sweep through. I'm always thinking, like, don't they know, like, my car's gonna hit them and kill them? Like, and they always seem to miss. But boy, this one was in the wrong place at the exact wrong time of 100-mile-an-hour. But man, you've had this. You've had this inside look on sports, on journalism, on equity in sports, equity in television. There's just been a lot. Always in the Dallas area, right, Robert?
Always in the Dallas area producing. I actually lived in New Jersey for my first 9 years. And then my family moved to Dallas. And when I was in New Jersey, I was a big Yankee fan. And my grandfather used to take us. I lived in Rutherford, New Jersey, so we would go to meet my grandfather in North Bergen and take the bus, the Port of Authority, and then take the subway to Yankee Stadium. And it was just such a great experience of going to the subway and everyone has the Yankee hats on, and then you get out of the subway. Well, before you get out of the subway, you see the signs, Yankee Stadium in the station, and you get really excited and you go up the stairs and there's Manny's Souvenir Land, and the smell of the hot pretzels and the chestnuts, and I want to get a hat or a helmet, and we do. And then you walk in, and then it's like the beautiful lush grass comes of the infield and the facade of Yankee Stadium, and the voice of the PA announcer, it's like legendary, and number 7, Mickey Mantle, number 7. It's like, and so I was a big Yankee fan, and then I moved to Dallas, and we don't have Major League Baseball. The closest teams were Houston, and then St. Louis. You could hear KMOX radio in Dallas because of the Clear Channel station. So a lot of people became Cardinal fans. But it's funny, once I moved to Texas, we always wanted to get like a Mickey Mantle card or Roger Maris card or Bobby Richardson, because I was a second baseman. That was my sport, baseball. and I played second. But when I moved to Dallas and I ended up playing for my junior high and high school team, my teammate was Mickey Mantle's son, David Mantle, which is kind of cool seeing, Steinfeld, Tobolowsky, Donosky, Mantle, and it was a real Mantle in the lineup card. So, and he looked just like his dad,
Yes.
red hair. So
It's
that was
so funny that you say that. I have a good buddy who was just watching the game the other night with a mom on one team and David Mantle with the Yankees and the I think it's the Guardians, right? And so you just have that. The way you describe the ballpark, by the way, man, I just think I don't know if that happens in every city. In Detroit we drove up. There was no train, right? But
right.
Chicago, you drive up. You take the train to Wrigley,
Exactly, or
and
Fenway.
yeah, Fenway too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, so you could do some things that like they have this effect. But man, as you described that, after listening as a Tiger fan to Ernie Harwell my whole life, right?
Yeah,
And
great. I knew him.
that, oh yeah, that's one of those voices, iconic, right? And going to that ballpark that first time you walk through the concourse and you see that green grass and you hear the PA announcer and you're just taking in all the smells. It's like
Oh,
it's
love it.
it's overwhelming for a kid, right?
It is, yeah, and especially back when I was really young, we only had a black and white television. So when you come out of the vomitory and you see that unbelievably manicured green grass and you see the groundskeepers spraying the water down, the infield down, and then they smooth it all out. And I loved watching that. That was
Yeah.
kind of cool to watch. But it was a great experience. And, then in Arlington where the Rangers played, there is no mass transit going to the station, so you have to drive there. And then there was nothing around the stadiums to like enjoy dinner ahead of time. Now there is, and there's more on the way. It's pretty incredible. When I started going to the Ranger games, and then I produced the Ranger games for many years and directed the Ranger games. And one of the great moments for me as a director too was I was the first director in Major League Baseball to direct two perfect games, not one. 1984, Mike Witt's perfect game, and then 1994, Kenny Rogers' perfect game. And then I had the pleasure to direct Nolan Ryan's 5,000 strikeout game, Ricky Henderson. And then for ESPN, I produced Nolan's 300th win. So those were big moments and fun things and great memories for me. So, baseball's ingrained in my heart.
Yeah. Yeah, and you worked with some great ones, right? I mean, we're going to get into a little bit of A-Rod later, Tom House, a famous coach
Yeah.
and pitching director. You've also done tons of stuff in the NBA. You've been producing the WNBA Dallas team since inception. I mean, been extremely busy, but you're a married guy, 43 years, two kids. Your two kids are still in the Dallas Metroplex area, correct?
That's correct. They are.
That's
Yeah.
pretty awesome. So they're close, and then of course they each have one grandchild. So you have two grandkids about
Little
2 years
girls.
old.
Yeah. And it's really kind of cool. We had no grandkids. And then suddenly we had two of them born within 2 months of each other. And
That's
my
awesome.
son and daughter are very close. So the two first cousins are growing up together. In fact, they just started preschool last month and they're in the same class. So that's kind of
That's
cool.
yeah, that's cool. Now, I mean, as a producer and selling these programs and projects into major networks, it's a very entrepreneurial environment. I had a good buddy who ran the production truck out of the Diamondbacks from the time they started, and lived in my neighborhood. Very entrepreneurial venture. Your brother's an entrepreneur. It started his online blind store on the side, sold that for a big multiple, wrote a book. What is it? Lead by Core? Is that what it
Yeah.
is?
Lead by the core. Yeah.
Lead by the Core. Yep. And so now, what prompted you to write 3, 2, 1? We're on the air.
Well, during COVID, when there was no games to produce and there was no games to watch, even, I was home a lot, and my wife looked at me one day and said, you're really starting to get in my hair. Why don't you go write a book or something? So I did, but it was over actually a 5-decade period to where, I would take notes when big moments happened, and write little chapters, not knowing for sure at that time whether I was going to be writing something. But I always think it's good when you have moments like that in anything you do, any profession or any life, just to journal it down. And so you have it. And if someday you want to go back and relive what had happened, or maybe write a book, you'll actually have the facts in front of you, so because 20, 30 years later, like some of the stories are, you may not remember exactly what had happened. So it's good to have those. So so I did that, and then I just decided during the COVID time, yeah, why don't we try to put something together? And it's like a 4-year process, when you write a
Oh
book.
yeah. Yeah,
It's
I
like,
know.
yeah, I know, but but the people at home think, a lot of people say to me, "Well, yeah, I could write a book," or my stories are probably better than yours." Well, maybe, and probably, or could be, but it's more to that. You have to actually be able to write a book or hire someone to write a book. Then the most important thing is that you actually take the time and do it, like an entrepreneur should. Don't talk about someday I might do it or I will do it or whatever. Just do it. It's not going to happen unless you actually set your mind to actually go out and to do it. And then you have to do the work of finding a publisher. And people like myself, independents, 98% of the time I've read, you're not going to get a publisher to publish a book, because the publishers really need a way to quantify in advance what they're going to be able to uh, publish, because they want to make money on it, and so I was fortunate enough, after a lot of different tries, reaching different publishers, and some don't even get back to you, and then some said they will, and then one of them was really interested in it, and they took it to a committee, and they said, well, you don't have that big of a social following, so
Yep.
it's hard. But then I was able to reach TCU Press and as a publisher, and within 24 hours, they loved my book. They loved my story, and they sent me an email. I said, we'd like to publish your book. And then I thought to myself, So I wrote him back and I said, you would like to publish my book, or you are going to publish my book? And they go, no, we are going to publish your book, and we'd like to fast track it if you agree with or you can self-publish it yourself. Because I was right at the point of pulling the trigger on that. But I decided to go with them because, a publisher is going to give you more panache. They're going to help with unbelievable distribution. The book, by the way, is available everywhere on all book sites, all over the world, like Germany, Australia. I was interviewed by an Australian podcast just last week. You can buy it everywhere, and so and even a lot of Barnes and Noble bookstores, and wherever you get books online, you can get the book. So they help with that.
Yeah, that's incredible. TCU Press, good group. Yeah, I did mine with Wiley, which is also an interesting thing. 200-plus-year-old publishing house, right? Like it's like, man, they got to know stuff that I don't know, right?
Yeah,
And no, I definitely, Robert, I underestimated the work. I'm a public speaker. I've spoke
right.
all over the world. I've told these stories. How tough is it going to for me to write these down and in full, right? And I found out that's very challenging to get all organized. And plus, I really supported all my concepts of leading winning teams with all these great interviews I have, like bringing like Robert Steinfeld to talk a little bit about this area, and direct quotes from some of the things in the shows and the interviews we've had. And man, putting that all together is a lot of work, right? Like, it's
It,
producing something.
it is. And so I was able to pull on our multiple Emmy Award winning show that I founded and co-produced, called Icons of Coaching, where we
Yeah.
were on Fox Sports Net National, and we went around the country and interviewed coaches who had won a championship. So we had some great coaches on the show, including, Coach K, Lenny Wilkins, a coach who just passed away, the former coach from Rice University, who also played for the New York Mets, and Casey Stengel. You know, so we had Jimmy Johnson. We went to Jimmy Johnson's house in the Florida Keys, and he took us a tour around his compound. And it's really like you go into where the special house where he keeps all of his fishing lures, and it's like he's taking you into the equipment room of the Dallas Cowboys. It's like,
Yeah.
well, here's my top water, here's my lures for marlin, here's my lures for getting the sharks. And they're all perfectly, labeled and everything. And it was like, and then he showed us his boats, and then all that, and then we talked about Cowboys, and then we did a show on John Wooden.
Yeah.
And so we went out to, we talked about his pyramid of success. I had Bill Walton was on that show. We went to Bill Walton's home in San Diego, and we did the interview in his guest house where all of his Grateful Dead equipment is. And so Bill and I had worked together. We worked at the Olympics before, and we worked NBA basketball, so I knew him. So, and he ended up writing the introduction to my book. His name's right at the top of the book. But people had asked me, well, I thought he passed away in May. Yeah, unfortunately he did, but he wrote the introduction a year ago in June of 23. And when he sent it to me, I couldn't believe it, because it was, if you read a passage in the book itself, it's Bill Walton talking, because you can just picture him reading the words. They're very colorful. So we were able to grab a lot of people that we had in the book, and I took some of their quotes, inspirational quotes, and put them in the book.
Oh, excellent. I tell you, as a Texas grad, you've seen big sports from the beginning. I mean, big sport, big level. I mean, Texas has always been on a prominent level in the country in about any sport, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter what sport. They compete at the national level. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And so, again, it's in the book, but my freshman year, I was very, like you said, very motivated to, achieve my career, so I had a very strong journalism background before I even, arrived on campus at Texas. So I had already got myself hired by the Daily Texan, the student newspaper, which is one of the best in the country, and to write on the sports staff before I even started classes at Texas. I was writing. So my first assignment was covering the Texas Longhorn football scrimmage when Darrell Royal was the head coach. And the headline in the paper, and I got permission to reprint this in my book, is, freshman Earl Campbell runs for 3 touchdowns and aids in 3 more in his first ever scrimmage. And so Earl Campbell and I were freshmen exactly the same time at the University of Texas. So, yeah, I had the opportunity to cover big time, sports. My first assignment for the student newspaper.
Yeah, it's a unique thing. When you go to work every day, I tell a lot of people this thing. I've spent my whole life with the top 3%, right? Like I when I was teaching in college, I was teaching tennis at the yacht clubs while I was putting myself, I had scholarship, but that was my summer job, some weekend work, and then I went right to professional baseball, where you go to work with 40, 50 millionaires a day, and they're not all in the major leagues. There's a lot of millionaires by the time we got there with signing bonuses in the minors. And it's a different environment, man. And so, you think about that, like you and Earl as freshmen, and you watch his, 16-year NFL career, or whatever it was, like an amazing talent. And a lot of people's hero, man. That's really cool. Like, but here's another thing most people don't know. Here's one thing most people don't know about you, Robert. you got a photo of you in Sports Illustrated in 1980 before anybody knew who you were. Tell us
Right.
about that photo.
Yeah, well, I was getting ready to work for the Dallas Mavericks on a freelance basis, because I wanted to, I had experience, working in sports, and they were, moving from Buffalo to Dallas. And so, you know, I was going to work, up in the scoreboard and help with the television because I had experience already working with ABC and others on a national level. And they had an exhibition game, and so I wasn't starting until the regular season started. So I actually had tickets that they gave me, and I took a date with me, and her name was Sarah, and I ended up marrying her 43 years later. We're still married, but little did she know what she was getting into. So I was real excited about going to that game. It was in 1980, and it was Philadelphia 76ers with Dr. J exhibition game, preseason game. And I went and brought my binoculars with me. And I didn't know it, but a photographer from Sports Illustrated had taken our picture, and they were doing a story about the Mavericks entering the NBA, and it was right during the World Series when this was coming out, because Mike Schmidt was on the cover of the video. And you open it, I didn't know I was going to be. I had no idea. You never mentioned anything about the picture or even asked for our names or anything. And then my roommate, just about 11 o'clock at night, he's opening up his Sports Illustrated, and he opens it up and starts screaming, Bobby, you're in Sports Illustrated. I'm going, what? I had no idea. And there's the picture of me with my binoculars, and the headline, "The Eyes of Texas are on the NBA." And my wife sitting there looking kind of like that, or just my date and everything. So, yeah. So one thing, I, I ended
Pretty
up in
cool.
Sports Illustrated.
Pretty
Yeah.
cool. I mean, it's not sports, it's not the
Not
swimsuit
for an
edition.
achievement, but it was kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a cool little story, like back in the Mavericks just starting. And by the way, like that was a huge year for me. I distinctly remember the Sports Illustrated, Robert. I might have it because I was a Philly fanatic, man. I
Yeah.
loved that 19 Steve Carlton, Big McBride, Manny Trio,
Manny
that Philly
Trio.
team. Greg Lazinski, it was
Yeah.
Pete Rose. I think Pete Rose was on that team in '80.
Yeah.
Like
Manny
they,
Trio. Yeah. I remember Manny Trio. I actually took my cousin who had lived in Princeton, and I went up to visit my cousin, and we went to Veterans Stadium, and we got there early, and like real early, to watch some BP. And we went down by the dugout, and my cousin got a foul ball, and we went over there, and Manny Trio was there and signed it. And we still have, every time I see my cousin to this day, he always brings up, remember when Manny Trio, we took that picture and he signed the baseball? Yeah. Kind of like, again, esoteric Manny Trio compared to all the big names on the team. But still, people that
Manny was a good
they
ball
make
player, man.
indelible. Yeah, he was good, but he was not necessarily the first
Star.
Philly you would mention on that team.
Yeah.
Like I said, on that Sports Illustrated that I was on, it was dated right around this time of year, the end of October,
Yeah.
and Mike Schmidt was on the cover.
Well, of course, right? The powerhouse third baseman, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
everybody knew, and
Yeah,
hitting fourth in the lineup and everything else, right? So it makes perfect sense why he gets the cover. But
yeah.
but it takes a team, right? And that's why and that's cool. What about the difference? Talk to me about the difference of a kid growing up, going to New York. How was it going to Veterans and walking in and seeing the AstroTurf? Because that was kind of still a new concept at that point. Like those
Yeah,
turf fields, by the way, were terrible to play on. They were
yeah,
so hard. It was
yeah.
crazy.
And what's worse is, the seams. If
Oh
the
yeah.
ball hits the seam, you don't know where the ball's going to go,
Oh
and
yeah.
you don't want to feel the ball with the friggin' coming up in your face or going off to the left or the right.
Oh
But I'll
yeah.
tell you what, when I was producing the Ranger games for years, Bobby Valentine was the manager most of the time, and Tom House was the pitching coach. They would they knew I played high school baseball and loved and always played the home run derby. And when we were growing up, going up against the fence wherever in our neighborhood, you would stay on the ball, and And so now they let me go out at the ballpark, the old Arlington Stadium ballpark, while the teams were taking early BP. And I would be able to go out there and shag the balls. And, there'd be only like 2 or 3 of us that early. And I would go up against, the warning track and jump about 2 inches off the warning track, and then throw the ball into Wayne Terwilliger, which is one of our coaches. But my point is that even natural grass can cause you problems as well, because
Oh yeah.
if it's really thick and like it was there, or the ball will come out and it can literally snake around your glove.
Yes.
Right? It's
You
like,
have, oh yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. People don't understand that. They see it on TV and think,
yeah,
oh, that's not a big deal. When it's coming hard at you, it's like,
yeah,
and you're
right.
like, let me drop a knee and make sure I get my body in front of this thing. Like
Yeah. So,
there's been many a man who have tried to, glove hand that thing off your left foot, move
yeah,
on you and watch that thing go to the warning track in the wall and just be like,
right.
oh man, a single just
Yeah.
turned into a triple almost automatically.
Yeah. And it depends what the warning track surface is made of too, because if it's really too hard, some of the, your cleats can slip out from under
Yep.
you. So, which I hated. But I also had a really good experience at Arlington Stadium, where when it was Home Sports Entertainment, which is a regional channel that our games listed on, it was HSE Day, and they actually asked me to throw out the first pitch, ceremonial first pitch. So I go, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm in my dressed up real nice. There's a picture of that in the book, but I was throwing from the mound. I'm not going in front of the mound, and I was still playing softball, so I thought I had a good enough arm, and I did. But I know the production. My whole crew was recording it from all angles because they wanted to
Yeah.
make fun of me if I threw it into the dirt, or
Yeah.
I threw it outside and
Did you
Bill
throw a strike?
Hasselman. Okay, I threw a strike, and I threw it 53 miles per hour, which they told me was the highest recorded speed on the jugs gun that as of that point of the season, which was later in the season. So I still have the ball right here to my right, and I have a picture of me throwing it. So yeah, I
That's
was
awesome.
proud of that. I could maybe throw it a little harder than that, but just for the ceremonial first pitch, I didn't want to show off or anything.
Yeah,
53
yeah.
miles per hour
Well,
is still pretty fast.
yeah, I threw out a first pitch at my wedding because I was married at a ball field. My brother wanted me to just rear back and bring them,
No,
75, 80 miles an hour. I'm in a tux, bro. I'm like,
right.
hey man, like I'm not doing that. B, like these kids are gonna go play ball after, and they're not here for me. Plus, if I rear back as little as I'd thrown, and after my
Right.
rotator repair, I'm probably ripping that thing off again, and unlikely to throw it anywhere near the zone. So I just thought, you know what? Better part
Yeah.
of valor. I'm going to toss this thing in
Yeah.
nice and easy. A little four seamer, nice and easy, man.
Yeah. Just get
And
it to the the catcher without it hitting the ground.
yeah, right. So, as you know, winners find a way. We talk a lot about, I love the quote, winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way to win. And Robert, man, with your background, you had to have been through some things, like through some challenges along the way. And yet, you find a way to get things done, right? I mean, this is, you are on a pretty heavy timeline every night, because it's not
Mhm.
like they're gonna, hey Robert, if you don't have things ready, you can just start the game whenever you want. Like that's
Mm-mm.
not the case, right?
No.
So preparation is a big deal. Walk me through a couple challenges from your ventures and your journey in this world.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple of challenges that, emotionally, you have to get through. Like, I was producing the first season of the WNBA for Lifetime and ESPN. And we had a great season. My announcers were Michelle Tafoya, Reggie Miller, Summer Sanders was our sideline reporter, and Megan Pattison, former college player. And so, yeah, we had a great season. I have some great stories from that season. Even when we actually played two of the Monarch players in a 2-on-2 game, the director and myself, and that was kind of a fun thing. But you can read about that story. What happened? There's a good ending to that story. But the season ended, and we did our final game. The executive producer, afterwards, saying, "Oh, great season! This fantastic. Everything was great." And then a couple of weeks later, I find out from him that his boss wants to have an all female front bench, which I have no problem with gender equity. It's even in the title of my book. I'm producing women's sports since I was in college, doing women's basketball, and it was AIAW before it was NCAA. It wasn't any argument, but it was a setback because I had no control over that. And you do a great job, and then there's a change. It's out of your control. So how do you handle that, and how do you move on and don't let it discourage you? That was my ambition. Just move on from it and know, there's things that are out of your control that you can't handle. So don't let it bother you. It's like, I think a good analogy is like, you could be the best pitching coach or hitting coach, in Major League Baseball. If the manager's change in the manager, well, manager, pretty much wants to come and bring his guys in with him. And so, yeah, you could be fantastic at what you do. And then that's the nature of being in this business too. It's like, yeah, things like that happen. Sometimes you could win an Emmy Awards, which I've won 10. And, and then all of a sudden your network loses the rights to that particular sport. And you've done a great job. And, well, all of a sudden they don't have that product or that show anymore, and you're out of job. So there are a lot of people, as a freelancer is the ultimate entrepreneur. It's like, so you're not just going to get awarded another job in that company because you're working for yourself and you're contracted to work for a network, but they don't necessarily have a responsibility, or most of them, they feel, to provide you with a backup.
Yeah, I tell you, I can really identify with that. I mean, I think that there's probably, some injustice in a lot of it, right? We talk about equity, and I think it's a challenging word for one. As everyone's quick to point out, well, there's no equity in the NBA because primarily it's dominated by black athletic players, like that they're really talented in the sport. Like, well, let's keep it even. That's not how it's ever going to be. There is merit still that still delivers on things. And yet, at the same time, it has been a challenge from the word go in baseball. As you've kind of mentioned, like a new coach comes in, the staff is immediately replaced. I certainly felt that in end of 1997 after being a coach with the Indians and spending 2 of the last 3 years in the World Series. I thought, like, hey, I'm doing a pretty good job, and I had a renewal year on my contract, so I had a 3-year contract with a what they call a bonus year, and you determine it at that time. So they didn't take the year. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I was so upset, so hurt, Robert, man. I was like, well, good luck winning without me. All the things that, like they'll never win again, right? And now, in fairness, they've only been back to one series right. Since, by the way. And, and they got beat by the Cubs. But, it was, your pride, your everything, your ego, it's just hurt. And, I tell a lot of people in sports, it's a tough thing, Robert, because most people go to work and they get a job and they work at that job 20 years. Listen, people get fired like every 2 or 3 years in sports. You are being fired is a regular occurrence, right? And it's like, oh my gosh. And you meet people who have never been fired in their life. Like, you got fired 5 times? I'm like, oh yeah, probably more, man. like, you get released from teams. I mean, it's bonkers. Like, but I think that's part of the, it's part of the resolve. It's part of the entrepreneurial spirit that I think athletes can transition very well to that environment, because they're built with that resolve. They're used to facing adversity. They're used to having to adapt and adjust, and they're used to hyper learning, going very quickly. And because Robert, like, if you can't learn fast and adapt quickly, you can't make it at that level. You can't make it in that
Yeah,
show.
that's true. And in our business, in the television business, when you get to the top level of the business, you better be good at what you do, but you need to maintain that level. You can't go into a game and go, well, we're just gonna like phone this one in. No, you can never do that. It's like I produce every game and give all my effort to every game I do. And Coach K once talked about, he got a letter from a coach, and that was in that coached, high school age kids and stuff, and that they wanted, it was a she wanted to coach up at the top level of college like he was at the point. And he says, well, yeah, that's a great aspiration, but you should focus on winning a championship at your level right now, and then, everyone, it means the championships at the level you're on now mean as much to them as it does at the next level and the higher level. They win a championship, parents are crying, they're loving it. I mean, they want to win every game they want to do. So focus now on what you're doing and win at your level, and then you can move up from there.
Yeah, I think David Morehouse, former president of the Pittsburgh Penguins, I feature him in my book, and he's now with the Steelers. In fact, I just talked to him this week. I was speaking in Pittsburgh. And David he was very instrumental in talking about, be the best right where you're at. And
Right.
I tell a lot of leaders, like, and their managers, when I talk to their managers, I'm like, know that you're being judged on the position you're in now. You may make a great VP of sales and the national sales director one day, but today you're this local salesperson and directing the local sales. And I use the example of being the district man, running a store at a Starbucks, and then going, boy, I think I'd make a great district manager, Robert. But if my store is 14th out of the 16 stores in our district, they're probably considering the number 1 or 2 store in our district, and the managers that probably are 1 and 2 close to our district, and they're going to come over. Right? Like, you can't be number 14. And so one of the things, like when I had Scott Spezio on the show, he was like, oh yeah, getting to the majors is easy, staying there is hard. And I'm like, all right, first of all, TO, like, it's not easy to get there. Like, Robert producing these major programs was never easy. All right, like, he had to work his way into this, but everyone's trying to knock you off. I mean, everyone would like to produce the San Antonio Spurs game this weekend. Everyone would like to produce that. So you're exactly right. You're as good as your last production, because if it's down, they'll find someone who's going to produce every night.
Exactly. Right. That's exactly true. So I go, there's 12 WNBA teams, and there's a finite number of Major League Baseball and NBA teams. And so before every game, even if, it's a football game or a basketball game or baseball, I'll actually go out on the field or the court. I'll sit, by the bench, and I'll watch the players warm up, and I'll just say to myself how fortunate and lucky I am that I have this job, that I love, and I keep pursuing it, and I want to keep the job, and I want to keep pushing myself and doing the best job. I don't want to just produce a game. I want to produce a show, with storylines and entertainment, and I don't take it for granted. So I do that before every game, just to kind of remind myself how lucky I am.
Let's pivot for a minute to the WNBA. Let's stay with that, but pivot to the Caitlin Clark effect. I mean, I am just astounded, after a league's been out there, 20, 25 years, the impact a single player, and we've seen it, right? We've seen it in other sports, Maradona and soccer. I mean, there's been icons that have come before that people can't wait to see. I think about, like, right now in the U.S., as Messi arrived to the U.S. market for our football program, or soccer worldwide, and it's just impactful. Tom Brady in the NFL. I mean, like, there's just players that all of a sudden it's like, man, and I remember this as a kid too. And this is more on the local level here, right, Robert? But man, I told anybody who would listen, the Lions weren't very good, but Barry Sanders was worth the price of admission,
Oh
man.
yeah,
Like, so whatever
definitely.
it cost, you got to go to see what he does, because it's unhuman, man. It's beyond that. Like, it's like,
Yeah,
who's ever done this? And no one can fathom that he's doing this against the best players in the world, right? And it's
right.
just like, and so this is the Caitlin Clark effect. She's already a super phenom, and then she goes up and gets with the elite of the elite, the top 0.5% of all basketball players in the world, and not only holds her own, but literally set the assist record in her first year. I mean, it's it's amazing to watch this young lady's impact.
Yeah, I mean, I literally have like produced 4 of her games, and one of the games I was actually working for the NBA and witnessed the game where she had set the record for most assists in the game, 19. And it's just, I asked her before the first game, May 3rd, in the shoot around practice, earlier in the day, she had a press conference. And I actually asked her about her passing ability. And she just lit up. It's like everyone's asking her about her shooting range and everything. And she goes, "Oh, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to getting the ball into Aaliyah Boston and some of the other players." But she's had such a major, big effect on the league. Like, I've heard, the league and people talking about what, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and Michael
Saves the
Jordan
league.
did. You know,
Saves the league.
they
Yeah.
saved the league, but the WNBA was tinkering for a while. It was, you weren't totally sure if it was going to stay around, but the NBA was there to subsidize it, for all they keep it around. Thank God they did. But now, with here's just some numbers. Attendance was up 48% over last year. There were 154 sellouts compared to 45. There were 54 plus million viewers over various networks. Social media drew 2 billion video hits, quadrupled from 2023. They just signed a combined NBA, WNBA $2.2 billion media rights deals for 11 seasons, reportedly. 22 of the regular season games had at least 1 million viewers. The Indiana Fever Sun game attracted record viewership on September 22nd. Look, the average number of fans in the WNBA last year was 6,615, and this year was 9,870. So a lot of that is attributed to Caitlin, because basically all of her games on the road were sold out. They had to move to bigger arenas, most of the teams did. And people want to watch her, also Angel Reese, people wanted to
Sure.
watch her as well, especially when they played each other. But even now, with both those players not in the NBA finals, the finals have just been fantastic to watch. Great games and really high viewership. So she's helped bring a lot more eyeballs to the sport, as you were saying. And so, some people, like one of my best friends who never really watched WNBA before, started watching the Caitlin Clark games. Then he would text me, "Oh, she's really fun to watch. These women play really well." So now you're seeing that there are there are great players in the league. So and the league's expanding. Next year, there's another team starting in Golden State, and then 2 years there are 2 more teams coming on board.
I think it's a great point that you make. She brought fans to the game that otherwise wouldn't be fans, and
Exactly.
they may be a fan of her, but then they go, "Hey, I want to be a fan of the Chicago Sky because that's my
Right.
hometown, and I'm going to start watching these, and I'm going to run my daughter and take my daughter down there, and we're going to watch some games." And because fundamentally, like, the basketball is really solid at the women's level, often fundamentally better than the men's. In fact, I laugh because this was the first year ever the women's college NCAA final outdrew the men's on TV. Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy to me,
Yeah.
that you've got South Carolina and Iowa in a final that Caitlin doesn't win, and South Carolina proves its dominance again, well-coached team, and and just, it reminds me a little bit of that, Dodger Mets deal. Like Iowa's got some great startup, they got energy, and their team is so supportive. But they're not shy. They're shy of a few players from being the complete team that South Carolina just doesn't have those weaknesses, right? It's just,
No, yeah, it's
it's like
true.
too much, and those Dodgers feel like they're too much for those Mets, And so it's like, man, there's a lot of synergies. Do you think, like, you see a lot of hate, hating on Caitlin, and some disarray every once in a while. I think Magic and Bird got that too. I think there were
Yeah,
players who were Dr. J, like, you'll never be as good as Dr. J because he was our guy. And those early days, I think there's probably people who didn't love those two.
yeah. You would think that they did not like each other, but it turns out when you watch the specials later on, they really enjoyed that rivalry the two, and now they have fun with it. But yeah, a little bit about that. But I think with Caitlin, what I was most impressed about her, beyond her sheer talent, was the way she handled all that adversity. When she was knocked to the ground, she didn't come back up fighting. She, in the press conference afterwards, they'd ask her about it, and she go, that happened. It's like, so she handled it, very, mature, and she knew it was going to kind of happen, and she, just went along with it, almost like, I know as a rookie you're going to probably get handled like that, but she really got, knocked down and hit a lot. And when I saw her up close once, you can kind of even see some of the bruises that are fading, that you can't see on TV. So I don't think it was fair, but she handled it so great.
Well, I think it was really refreshing to me to see a superstar with that level of poise, because I recall coaching a young man in his hockey, and he was by far an all-state player,
Right.
and he was losing his cool. He was still a junior, and he was clearly the best player on our team. And I pulled him aside and I said, you act like you're surprised every time this happens. I don't understand. Walk me through it. And he goes, well, they're holding on me. They're doing all this stuff. I'm like, they're doing anything to stop you, and they're going to do
Right.
it till the officials call it. And you've
Right.
got to be able to keep your cool. They win if you spend 6 minutes in the box. If you get 3 penalties, they win because they took our best player off the ice for all that time. And the very mere fact that you're shocked that this is going to happen. This isn't a matter of like if this happens. This is when this happens. They're
Right.
coming for you. They've been coached up. They're going to like look for you. Two players are going to watch everything you're doing. We don't have anyone nearly as good as you on the other side of this team and on your line.
Yeah.
So, and I just think, very much like McDavid, right? Who's this superstar athlete. And he's not surprised when people are dragging on him, pulling on him. I mean, he knows this is going to happen. Nice thing about hockey is you get the enforcer, right? So like, don't get too
Right.
crazy on him, because we'll settle this thing in a hurry. And other players know that too. But I agree with you. The way she de-escalated any kind of, because it very easily could have become an escalated incident. And oh, look at this, and then it's he said, she said, and blah blah blah. I mean, it's not worth the energy and the time. Everyone knows what's going on, why they're doing it, and she's aware. And I call that, Robert, looking out of the windshield, looking out the big glass instead of trying to navigate your life through the rearview mirror, looking back, playing the victim. Woe is me. She's never done that, and I really appreciate and honor that.
Yeah. That's really good. I agree with that philosophy as well.
The disappointing one for me, because is these sound bites. And I don't know Cheryl Swopes, but her sound bites have been terrible. And I had so much admiration for Cheryl Swopes as a player. I mean, just an incredible talent when she came in. And now it just sounds terrible. It sounds jealous. It sounds all these things. And I'm like, this iconic player is is somewhat ruining her reputation as this iconic athlete because of these things at the end of her career. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I think everyone has, certain opinions, and right. I think it's just now the way it is with podcasts and blogs and stories. A lot of that stuff is now public instantly, whereas
Yeah.
it used to people would have opinions and you wouldn't necessarily know about it. So, you know, um,
Yeah,
so I
maybe we
kind
could
of
edit
leave
that
it at
out.
that.
Maybe that's not what I wanted to say. Hey, Robert, could you edit that out? I don't think I want that publicly. And
Right.
that's not going to happen anymore. And
No.
I think, yeah, talk about that a little bit, because when we talk about leadership, I tell a lot of people, is 24/7 now. That's very different when you and I grew up, where at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, we go home, read the newspaper. What happens inside our home is inside our home. Later to find out that there was a lot of leaders that may have been bad actors, but no one would ever know that because there was some privacy. And now with these phones, social media, like everywhere you go, people know if you're, especially like an athlete, and someone taking a photo of you or a video of you at a grocery store trying to get something, for a sick spouse or something at 11:30, and having a bad interaction while you're fatigued, and all of a sudden you're designated this horrible person, just like that, just like that.
Right. And you know what? It's like it's a double-edged sword, because most of these athletes and people, like yourself and others, you have a brand and you have social channels and you want to be out there socially. But then when you kind of feel like you don't want that, then you shun if you shun people away, now you're seen as someone, a bad light. It's like so it's really hard. It's like if you really want to be out there, then you kind of need to understand that, when you make an impression on somebody, when they see you, a lot of times these people, fans or just regular people that see you, a celebrity on the street, they almost feel like they know you and that you would know them automatically, right?
Yeah,
And so you go
yeah.
up to them and they don't know you. They don't know you're friendly. They don't know you're a fan. So they're a little guarded, at first. So and then the other thing is that fans have to realize when athletes are working a game and, they go as they're going back to the locker room, they sign some autographs. They're on a finite schedule as well. They can't stay out there. Some players won't even, sign at all because they can't. They have to go back and do, training. They have to do some, get their ankles taped up. Or they have to do, get in the sun, in the whirlpool, or, it's
Team
like
meeting.
yeah, team meetings. So they might have been out there shooting a little longer than they normally would or whatever. And so, or, they go, I'm sorry. So now a fan thinks that they just blew them off. But, you have to understand that a lot of time. The athlete, they're going to give as much time as they can. And then, and then when it's time to do their professional job, they, unfortunately have to just leave.
Yeah. Well, 3, 2, 1, we're on the air. I mean, that book is available now on all the major networks. You can find it Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million. You find them on all the big networks, and get to your local store and grab a copy. Robert, what do you want folks to take away from your book?
I'm glad you asked me that because, it's not so much a subliminal message in the book, but if you read between the lines on the book, I want people to, even parents, have their kids read the book, it will help them in their personal and their professional lives ultimately. It's kind of like a blueprint for success, and I also want people to know how much I love what I'm doing. So I want them to think to themselves, what can I do in my career to where I can pursue my passion, where I can get paid for doing something I'd be doing anyway, like watching the games or participating in the games. So become an expert in that field and make a career. Don't wait for someone to come to you. if you want to be in this business and you're just starting out, go to a high school game and start calling play-by-play, or start editing, a feature, or start, go to a football game and do a sideline report and put it on tape. Just start doing it, and then you can then talk to networks and talk to the local radio station and ask them if you could work some of the game, get your foot in the door, any job, because whatever you learn how to do will help you later on, in whatever path you want to ultimately take.
Yeah, I think I love that advice, Robert. I tell a lot of folks, like, if you want to go after something in in this life, you go. I'm a dream maker. Like, whatever you're dreaming about, I'll help you get there. But you've got to do the work. Contribution is a big deal. How do you contribute in those environments? Because
Yeah.
contributors, you never have people saying like, "Oh, Robert's bringing so much to the team, we should let him go." That never is said ever. Like,
Right.
it's the time when you no longer bring anything to the team that the team no longer needs you. So
Yeah.
being able to stay relevant and be a contributor is such a big deal. A couple huge stories in the book. I love the Dot Richardson, the softball Olympic, coming out of retirement, quote unquote, as a doctor and getting your chance at Olympic gold. Near and dear to my heart, friend of A-Rod back in the All-Star game, passing the torch to Cal Ripken in 2001 was a huge moment. I was a big part of, right in the mix of that as Cal set his Ironman record, and really another kind of saved baseball moment, right?
Yeah.
And so you've just got some unbelievable stories. Thank you to TCU Press for putting this together. And 321, we're on the air, author Robert Steinfeld. Robert, closing remarks. It's tough out there right now. You see some people that are challenged. You see people going through some things. It's not always easy. You've been down in the past and through some challenging times. What do you tell someone right in the moment when things aren't great?
There's always a brighter side, and just keep pushing and motivating, and reaching for a certain goal. It's like, and try to always be ready when the opportunity comes for you. Don't give up.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. There's something about positioning and being ready for the opportunity that is, I've seen more opportunities in the major leagues, in companies selling their businesses, in just being in position for the opportunity is such an important thing. This is my guest, Robert Steinfeld, 10-time Emmy Award winner, author of 321, We're on the Air. And man, such a good time, Robert, to have you come aboard the Winners Find a Way show. Thank you so much. Robert, real quick, tell them where they can find you.
You can find me at robertsteinfeld.com. That's my author and website. More on the book there. You can also order the book there. And if you want to send me an email, you can send me an email on that platform at robertsteinfeld.com.
Perfect. For everybody else, thank you again for joining us every Thursday a.m. Every Thursday 10 a.m. Live, 7 a.m. Pacific. That's 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. Join us on the Winners Find a Way show. Our podcast launch globally on all networks Friday mornings every week, and you will see Robert and many more on that network, as well as the Leadershipity YouTube channel. Our book, again, Leading Winning Teams, my book with Wiley Business, is coming up on our Audible release on November 12th. Jump out and grab that if you don't have your copy yet. And until next time, winners find a way.